Welcome to Conversational with Carrie Olsen. I'm Carrie. You've heard my voice on HBO Max, Disney Plus, Grammarly, and the MTV Movie and TV Awards, which is funny because I used to be terrified of what people thought of my voice. About me in general, really. I was exhausted from replaying conversations over and over in my head. Did I say something wrong? What did they really think? I was wasting so much mental energy obsessing over what I thought people thought about me. When I got into voiceover, I knew that the more authentic I was behind the microphone, the better I would be at my work. But I was surprised when that started spilling over into everything else. I stopped trying so hard to micromanage other people's experience of me and started learning how to just show up as myself. In this podcast, we talk about how the skills that make you better at voice acting also make you better at life. Let's get conversational. Things aren't always black and white. Today, we're talking about how stopping at your first impression could actually be costing your business. Whether it's a person or a specific challenge or some situation that you're ready to write off as not being worth your time. When you instantly judge something as being either bad or boring or difficult, you eliminate the possibility of finding what could be real value in that thing. And one of the places where I learned this most tangibly was with voiceover scripts. It's easy to think that once you've seen one voiceover script, you've seen them all. And if you get too familiar with the patterns in certain scripts, then it can be really easy to just assume it's going to fit a certain stereotype and then just kind of phone it in when you do the read instead of trying to see if there's something else there. So when I see a voiceover script and it immediately catalogs in my brain as I've seen this 1,000 times, this is simple and maybe even unoriginal, I've learned to start not trusting that initial reaction. And I look closer. And I've been surprised on multiple occasions by what I can pull out of a seemingly generic script. And the same thing happens with people, as we're going to discover in a little bit when I tell you a story about the actor Christoph Waltz. Welcome back to Conversational with Carrie Olsen. I'm Carrie. This season, we're exploring implementation in real time, what it looks like to actually do the work consistently. And this topic for today affects all of us, whether you're a voice actor or you're in business leadership, or you're just trying to navigate everyday opportunities and relationships. We're talking about our tendency to judge things and people immediately, to decide within seconds whether something is good or bad or worth our time or not. Research from Princeton University shows that we make character judgments in 1/10 of a second. That's faster than a blink. And according to studies on snap judgments, these instant decisions often stick, even when we encounter contradictory evidence later. Now, there's actually some nuance here because sometimes our instincts are extremely valuable, especially in social situations where we're reading safety cues and interpersonal dynamics. But we get in trouble when we start thinking in black and white, like whether something or someone is all good or all bad based on that first impression. Researcher Alexander Todorov at Princeton University found that when people were asked to deliberate and make careful judgments instead of trusting their first impressions, it took dramatically longer and actually reduced accuracy in certain contexts. But the key here is that was about trusting faces for trustworthiness. When it comes to complex material, like people, situations, creative work, snap judgments can actually lead us completely astray. There's value in leaving room to be wrong about our first impressions, being open to having our minds changed, maybe even seeking it out, appreciating the opportunity to discover we may have missed something on our first glance. As a voice actor, I've experienced this with scripts, but you've experienced this with people. Maybe the difficult employee or the opportunity that seemed really boring until you gave it a closer look. So here's what I want to explore today. How do you find gold in places and in people that you've already written off? Here's a story that I think will help change the way you think about judgment and interpretation. The actor Christoph Waltz brilliantly played Hans Landa in the movie Inglourious Basterds, directed by Quentin Tarantino. He played a Nazi officer in the movie, so he was clearly a villain, right? Obviously, he got cast to play the evil character. But when an interviewer asked him how he channeled the evil for his character, Waltz looked really confused, and he said, "He's not evil." The interviewer, I think it was David Letterman, he pushed back and said, "What do you mean he's not evil? He's a Nazi." But Waltz explained that he didn't play the character as evil. He played him as a detective who happens to wear a Nazi uniform. Even in this obviously villainous role, He found the humanity, he found the logic, and the internal consistency that made this character make sense from the inside. According to research on the role, Waltz said that his character wasn't even driven by ideology. He was driven by the same things that you and I are driven by. He wanted to be good at his job. He was driven by his understanding of how the world works. And he was driven by his professional pride. Just because someone is the obvious bad guy doesn't mean you play them like a cartoon villain. He found the humanity in the most inhuman character imaginable. So what does this have to do with finding gold in unexpected places? Even in the most one-dimensional material, or one-dimensional person, there's humanity and logic. The employee that everyone's written off as lazy, the client who seems impossible to please, the business partner who just doesn't get it, or that team member that everyone avoids. What if they're not one-dimensional? What if you just stopped looking for the complexity? This connects to fascinating research on empathy and interpretation. A study published in Memory and Cognition showed that people with higher empathy skills are significantly better at interpreting ambiguous material and ambiguous people. They consider multiple possible meanings instead of just settling on the first impression. They stay curious about what something or someone could mean instead of deciding immediately what they do mean. The researchers found that empathetic interpreters don't just choose one meaning and commit. They hold multiple possibilities in mind until they find the meaning that makes everything else coherent. As a voice actor, I do this with scripts. But we can all do this with people, too. Whether you're reading scripts or reading people, humans are ambiguous. We're multifaceted. We often don't say what we mean. We feel multiple, sometimes conflicting emotions simultaneously, but we can only express things one word at a time, one sentence at a time, and one action at a time, which means that what comes out is always a meld of competing intentions and feelings. But this isn't a bad thing. Honestly, that's where the richness comes from in a brilliantly delivered voiceover read. Instead of simplifying a script into one simple emotion, it becomes a brilliant read when you honor that complexity and you find all of those layers. And in leadership, it's the same. The richness in understanding people comes from honoring their complexity instead of flattening them into simple categories like difficult or unmotivated or not a team player. Research on emotional intelligence shows that when we deeply engage with complexity, when we don't just skim the surface, we start to understand the multiplicity of what's being communicated. The richness isn't in making everything simple and clear. It's in honoring the fact that human behavior is layered and complex and sometimes contradictory. So when someone's behavior doesn't immediately make sense, that's not necessarily because they're irrational or difficult. It might be because they're navigating complexity that you can't see from the outside. Your job, whether you're a voice actor interpreting a script or a leader interpreting a person, is to find what makes that complexity coherent. So let me show you how this works with voice acting first, and then we'll bridge to apply it to people. There was one particular e-learning script that I was working with one time, and it was a driver safety script for drivers who work at a specific construction company. As voice actors and narrators, a lot of times we tend to just read the words that are put in front of us. It would have been easy to just take that script and just read the words that were put in front of me because that's my job. But I had the opportunity to be a part of some of the development meetings for that course. And what I found out was that the reason that this company was creating this driver safety course was because some of their employees had been getting into accidents and they wanted to help try to keep their drivers safe. Also, because of all the accidents, their insurance rates were rising, and they wanted to keep their insurance rates low. So they figured if they could teach their drivers to be safer on the road, then there would be fewer accidents and lower insurance rates. The course existed not just as some random compliance course, but to solve an actual problem. And as the narrator, I'm a part of that solution. I'm no longer just reading words. I'm potentially helping someone from getting injured. I'm helping this company protect their people and their bottom line. When I connected to the real humans behind the script, even a seemingly simple and potentially boring one, suddenly I wasn't just performing copy. I was serving an actual purpose. The gold wasn't in the words themselves, it was in the meaning behind them, the why behind them. So taking this back to the people examples we talked about earlier, what if the unmotivated team member is actually brilliant, but just working in the wrong role? The gold or the value isn't always in what's on the surface. It's in the why behind the behavior. Every person was intentionally created with experiences, pressures, fears, and motivations that you can't see at first glance. Your job as a leader is to figure out what those are, not to judge the person, but what to find out what actually makes sense. So how do you systematically find the gold in those hidden places, moving from judgment to curiosity to understanding? Here's the framework I use that works for both scripts and for people. Step 1 is observe without deciding. As a voice actor, I read a script and I notice my reactions. Maybe this is boring or this doesn't make sense. But I don't let those reactions become decisions. With people, you might notice this person is difficult. But can we hold that observation without it becoming our final verdict? Those first reactions are useful data points. Asking the question, why am I reacting this way, is the beginning of curiosity, not the end of analysis. Who would this person need to be for their behavior to make perfect sense? Step 2 is I research the context. As a voice actor, I don't just Google the company name. I visit their website. I go to their YouTube channel. I check their other content. So many times, the context helps reveal intention. So if there's a confusing script and I can't figure out certain parts, a lot of times just going to the company's website or viewing past YouTube videos helps to fill in those blanks. So now that I know why the script was structured in a certain way or why this specific word was used multiple times. With people, what's happening in their world that you can't see? What pressures are they under? Or what constraints are they navigating? The client who changes their mind constantly might be dealing with contradictory feedback coming from different stakeholders. The context changes everything. Step 3 is get curious about every choice. As a voice actor, every element that doesn't make immediate sense becomes a question. Why this emphasis? Why did they make that decision? What would make their choice logical from their perspective? Don't skim past the confusing parts because that's where the gold is hiding. Step 4 is make it 100% coherent. As a voice actor, I don't stop until the script makes complete sense. Not good enough sense, but total and complete sense. With people, don't stop until their actions make perfect sense from their perspective. Not from your perspective, but from their perspective. Sometimes this means I have to rewire my understanding. Find a logic that makes every element necessary and meaningful, even if it's not the most obvious interpretation. Here's a key question that I ask myself with voiceover scripts. Who do I need to be to say these words believably? Step 5 is test different interpretations. As a voice actor, the same words can mean completely different things based on tone. So this might mean that I cycle through different possibilities, sarcastic, irreverent, down to earth, oblivious, and then choose the one that makes all the elements fit together, that makes them coherent. With people, could this behavior be fear instead of arrogance? Maybe protection instead of attack? Overwhelm instead of laziness? Research on interpretation shows that skilled leaders don't just choose one interpretation and then commit. They test multiple possibilities and choose the one that makes the person's full pattern of behavior make sense. Sometimes this digging for gold in unexpected places can be a lot of fun, because if you have a really great script and you're enjoying trying to find the nuggets everywhere, that's exciting. But professionals bring this level of engagement to everything, not just the exciting opportunities. As a voice actor, when I only dig deep on scripts that immediately inspire me, I'm probably leaving money on the table. But the scripts that appear to be less interesting on the surface, that's actually where I can add the most value when I do dig deeper and try to find the gold. As a leader, when you only deeply engage with easy people and exciting opportunities, you're also leaving massive potential on the table. The people and situations that require the most work to understand are often the places where you can create the most significant transformations. So this is true in both voice acting and in life, that whenever you approach someone or something with curiosity instead of judgment, with the assumption that there's gold to find instead of flaws to judge, the work becomes more satisfying. Not easier necessarily, it does require more time and energy and effort, but definitely more rewarding. Because you're not just managing people or executing tasks, you're solving human puzzles. You're finding humanity in seemingly difficult situations. You're making things coherent that other people overlook. That's the real work of leadership. So here's your challenge this week. Take the person that you've already judged, the difficult team member, the confusing client, the opportunity that seems boring, or the business partner who frustrates you, and apply the 5-step framework. Number 1, observe without deciding. Notice your reaction, but don't let it become your conclusion. 2, research the context. What's happening in their world that you can't see? Number 3, get curious. Why would their behavior make perfect sense from their perspective? 4, make it coherent. Don't stop until their actions make complete sense. 5, test interpretations. Could this be something other than what you assumed? And document what you find. Notice when your first judgment was wrong. Notice when deeper curiosity completely reframed your understanding. Notice what happens to the relationship when you approach them with genuine curiosity instead of judgment. If you want to see this framework again, text VOICE to 55444. You can also go to carrieolsenvo.com/finding-gold to leave a voice message about your own experiences finding gold in unexpected places. Every person, every challenge, every situation has hidden gold, even the ones you've already written off. Christoph Waltz found humanity in his villainous character. We can find gold in seemingly boring driver safety courses. Your job isn't to judge, it's to find what's actually there, to honor the complexity that reflects actual human experience. This is what separates the professionals from the amateurs in voice acting, and it's what separates exceptional leaders from average ones. The best leaders aren't the ones who only engage with easy people and exciting opportunities. They're the ones who find gold everywhere, even in the scripts nobody else wants to read. Thanks for tuning in to Conversational with Carrie Olsen. If you found value in today's episode, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for new episodes. For today's resources and to stay connected, text VOICE to 55444. I'll see you next week.